chaotic day here in Washington, D.C. We have breaking news, a horrific scandal.
Earlier this week, Charles Forbes was convicted of embezzlement here in D.C.
Oh, I heard this was balled up.
Yeah, he was assigned a task 3 years ago by President Harding to create a Veterans Bureau.
This was designed to benefit veterans with hospitals and a comforting environment.
Of 300,000 veterans, Forbes was able to help 46,000. With an unlimited budget, he felt free to buy whatever was needed for these hospitals.
But with such power comes responsibility, and Forbes abused such privileges because his shopping list for his hospitals was so extensive. He was able to hide the money that he was stealing inside of those lists.
For 3 years, he managed to pull this off and earn money that was not rightfully his. He did this by simply adding a zero at the ends of each of his expenses.
After being caught with too much floor wax, Forbes was accused of taking $250 million with 2 years in prison and a $10,000 fine.
It is quite a disappointment for President Harding to lose someone he thought to be such a good friend from a scandal like this.
Where can I get some of that floor wax?
That's all for now.
Aw, applesauce. Good morning, America. It's another beautiful day here in Washington, D.C. We have another scandal that just came in.
Albert Fall was the previous Senator of New Mexico and is the current Secretary of the Interior.
President Harding decided to let Fall control the oil reserve for the U.S. military.
Which was 180 miles.
Yes, the oil reserve was 180 miles. Albert Fall then gave drilling rights to a private company and let them drill 6 inches outside of the 180 miles.
They technically didn't do anything wrong, but they were still taking the same oil from the oil reserve controlled by the U.S. military.
One of Fall's fellow senators was suspicious of Fall's behavior and was curious as to why anyone would make a contract for oil release just 6 inches out of the U.S. military reserve.
The senator was convinced that Fall was taking bribes, so he dug deeper.
He found out that on Fall's farm in New Mexico, Fall raised exotic cows worth $2,000. What baloney!
After 16 months of digging, it became known that the private oil company bought Fall the cattle as a bribe.
Woo, these cows ain't cheap.
Where can I get me some of that cattle?
Oh, Tali, don't take any wooden nickels. Thanks for listening, America. And now to the weather.
Good morning, America. Welcome to the 30s. We have a nerve-wracking story for you today that will have you sitting on the edge of your seat.
Yes, this story will knock your socks off.
You might want to turn the volume up on this one.
Parents, listen up so this won't happen to your kids.
Now to the story.
Many of you probably remember the amazing flyboy Charles Lindbergh from the Roaring Twenties.
He was the big cheese of aviation.
His son was kidnapped from the nursery of the Lindbergh home.
A ransom note demanding 50,000 clams was found on the nursery window.
Luckily, no blood was found at the scene.
Yeah, but unfortunately, no fingerprints were found either.
A second ransom note was received that increased the ransom from $50,000 to $70,000.
After 12 ransom notes, Lindbergh got a tip that the baby could be found on a boat named Nellie.
But the baby was not there. It was assumed that he was bumped off.
Dun dun dun.
Tali, you're right. A few months after the baby went missing, he was accidentally found, partly buried 4.5 miles from Lindbergh's house.
Later, they found that the baby had been dead for a few months, and he died from a blow to the head.
What's eating you, Hillary?
This story is just so tragic. The sap who did this should get what he deserves.
On a happier note, we've got plenty of bulls out on the lookout.
Wow, that was an earful.